Yeah.
If you're an HR professional right now, you're navigating what has to be the most volatile operating environment we've seen in decades. The job has just fundamentally changed. It's
Mhm.
no longer about, just managing personnel or updating the employee handbook.
Right.
It's about mastering this massive simultaneous disruption. You're dealing with everything from algorithmic recruiting to managing these highly dispersed teams working across every time zone you can imagine. The speed and the scale are just immense.
They really are. And the core challenge for HR leadership, I think, is moving from being this, administrative necessity to having real strategic foresight.
Exactly.
How do you build and retain a relevant workforce when the very definition of work is being rewritten by technology and global forces? And that's the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, and that's our mission today. We've been diving deep into a fascinating stack of research that projects the future of HR in 2026 and really well beyond.
Yeah.
Our goal is clear. We want to name the key external trends driving this change, analyze precisely how those forces impact core HR activities like recruitment and performance management, and, crucially, identify the essential new skills that HR teams must develop to stay, not just relevant, but indispensable.
Yeah, we're basically taking these high-level predictions and trying to translate them into an actionable understanding for you. We're looking at what strategic HR capability looks like when the workforce is global, fluid, and heavily augmented by, and sometimes even replaced by, advanced technology.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the big picture, the seismic shifts. The sources identify three sort of non-negotiable forces that are fundamentally driving change in every single HR strategy right now.
These are the forces applying, I'd say, existential pressure to every organization, whether you're a startup or a Fortune 500 company.
Okay.
The first one, and it's the one that grabs the most headlines, is the rapid increasing use of automation and artificial intelligence right across the board.
And we're not talking about marginal efficiency gains here, are we? We're talking about a dramatic structural shift. Tell us about the scale of this projected change.
The scale is, well, it's staggering. The research we looked at included the insight from Microsoft, which projected that by 2030, an estimated 300 million human jobs globally will be augmented or replaced by AI.
300 million.
That's not just a strategic challenge. That's a societal reformation that HR has to plan for today. It fundamentally changes the entire conversation around talent acquisition and retention.
Right.
If a machine can do the task, HR's job shifts entirely to managing the machine and then training the human to work alongside it.
Wow. That shifts the HR role from like a compliance manager to a data ethicist and a talent futurist almost overnight.
Mhm.
So what's the second major driver?
The second major force is the changing workforce demographics.
Wow.
And it's specifically linked to what the sources call extreme longevity.
Extreme longevity.
Yeah. This isn't just about the baby boomers retiring. It's about the fact that populations are living longer, healthier lives. And what does that mean in practice? It means the traditional 40-year career is likely gone. You might have 3 distinct 25-year careers in your lifetime.
So HR has to manage multi-generational teams ranging from, 22-year-olds straight out of university to 75-year-olds who've pivoted their careers twice already.
Exactly.
That creates completely different training requirements and vastly more complicated engagement strategies.
Precisely. And the third force, which, as you mentioned, accelerated so dramatically in the early 2020s, is globalization and the necessity of seamless virtual collaboration.
Managing dispersed teams is just the new normal.
It is. And that third force is intrinsically linked to this concept of a globally connected world. Managing teams spanning continents and 8 or more time zones means completely rewriting the rule book.
On everything.
On everything. Performance feedback can't wait for a weekly chat. Compensation equity has to consider regional cost of living. And culture. Culture has to be intentionally designed to be asynchronous. It's a shift to managing what are sometimes called superstructured organizations.
Superstructured.
Meaning teams designed for specific outcomes, often temporary and totally regardless of geography.
So those three, AI, demographics, and globalization, they sound like massive independent challenges, but they're all colliding right on the HR professional's desk.
Yes, and we connect this to the bigger picture. The sources argue these aren't isolated incidents. They are manifestations of these core disruptive shifts. For instance, AI and automation.
Right.
That's the practical reality of what they call a computational world and smart machines coming online.
So the computational world isn't just a new tool, it's like a new operating system for your business.
Exactly. And that push toward global, flexible teams is what's driving the need for those superstructured organizations we mentioned. These aren't temporary issues. They change the foundational nature of jobs, skills, and organizational structure itself.
Okay, so if those are the macro trends applying all this strategic pressure, what does that look like when we move to the concrete reality of, how work is actually structured on the ground?
Right.
We drew on some insights from the World Economic Forum, and they break this new reality down into three distinct dimensions of work.
Yeah, the structure of work has fundamentally fractured into these three areas. The first is who does the work.
Right.
Historically, that was simple: full-time employees. Now, that model has shifted dramatically. We're seeing this massive growth in crowdsourcing for high-skilled tasks, an explosion of gig workers integrated into strategic teams, and a greater reliance on fractional or part-time senior staff.
Which makes the HR role incredibly complex because you have to manage a diverse legal and contractual landscape, different insurance needs, different tax implications. It's not a single standard employee handbook anymore.
Exactly. The second dimension is how the work is done. This goes back to our earlier point about the computational world. Robotics, algorithms, automated processes. They're no longer just tools used by humans.
They're partners.
They're integrated non-human partners in the workflow.
Yeah.
So HR needs to manage the performance and availability of the machine just as much as the person.
And the third dimension is when and where work is done. This is that shift away from the traditional collocated workspace toward remote workers and fluid work schedules. For a lot of the workforce, the office is, at best, a highly negotiated resource now.
And that transition is anything but smooth. Forrester's 2025 predictions highlighted some immediate conflicts HR is already managing. We see the escalating return to office wars, where organizations are struggling to enforce policies against a workforce that now expects flexibility as a given.
I imagine for many HR teams, the return to office wars aren't theoretical. They're the most emotionally draining Monday morning meeting they have.
They are. And relatedly, Forrester predicted this frantic rush to try and close skills gaps using AI-powered tools. Everyone knows they need to upskill their teams quickly, but they're just throwing automated training solutions at the problem without fully diagnosing the underlying human need.
And this chaos leads to maybe the most fascinating and perhaps most difficult concept from the sources: the dominance of conditional EX, or conditional employee experience. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, conditional EX means the experience an employee has. So their access to resources, their flexibility, their career path, even their physical workspace is increasingly conditional on measurable factors. Like their location, their specific performance metrics, or their particular contract or schedule.
So the company policy isn't universal anymore. It depends on you. If you live within 50 miles of the hub, your experience is X. If you work on the advanced AI project, your access to premium training is Y. That sounds like a tightrope walk for any HR team aiming for fairness.
It is, because the old one-size-fits-all approach is just dead. HR has to figure out how to manage perceived and real equity when the employee experience is inherently conditional and highly personalized.
Right.
It forces HR to be strategic about every single policy decision and the conditions they attach to it.
Okay, since managing conditional EX requires such immense strategic focus, let's talk about the specific toolbox HR professionals need to handle that tightrope walk.
Yeah.
Here's where it gets really interesting. How do HR professionals themselves adapt to these immense forces, the computational world, extreme longevity, and these superstructured organizations?
Well, the sources point to a required shift from sort of reactive administration to proactive analysis and literacy. We need HR to stop being just a service center and start being strategic analysts and interpreters of complexity. And this demands three specific advanced capabilities.
Let's start with the first one, which is sense-making. What exactly does that entail in an HR context, especially when AI is supposed to be doing all the analyzing?
Sense-making is critical because as AI takes over more of the tasks, the human roles become more strategic. HR professionals have to cultivate purpose and understand new opportunities and threats that are arising from this computational world.
So it's the opposite of just data reporting.
Exactly. It means HR can look at two conflicting data sets, one showing high burnout in a remote team, another showing high measured output, and figure out the underlying cultural why that the algorithm totally missed.
It's understanding context, purpose, and strategic threat. Basically, interpreting the human implications of the data the machine produces.
You got it. Okay, next, we need computational thinking. This skill is necessary for interfacing directly with those smart machines and automation we talked about.
This isn't about coding, though, right?
No, not at all. It's about understanding algorithmic systems, data flow, and process logic. If HR is going to use an AI tool to source candidates, they need to understand the biases, the inputs, and the feedback loops of that tool. They can't treat it like a black box.
They need to understand the logic underpinning the machine, not just trust its output implicitly. They become auditors of the algorithm.
Precisely. And the third essential skill relates directly to the complexity of this global and connected, fluid environment: cognitive load management.
That sounds a bit like self-care, but I'm guessing it's much broader than that.
It is. It's a direct response to what the sources call the new media ecology and the intense virtual collaboration.
Okay.
HR professionals first need to manage their own cognitive burden from these global asynchronous work environments. But more importantly, they need to help the entire organization manage that load by setting communication boundaries, designing streamlined feedback flows, and preventing burnout when work is always on. This is how you preserve human capacity in a high-speed digital world.
So it's about translating digital noise into human capacity and resilience. Beyond those three critical skills, sense-making, computational thinking, and cognitive load management, the research notes a host of other associated future work skills.
Right, those include the non-negotiables for a global changing environment, novel and adaptive thinking, which is crucial when your industry is constantly being disrupted, social intelligence for navigating complex human-machine interactions, and cross-cultural competency for working seamlessly with dispersed teams. And virtual collaboration skills have moved from a nice-to-have to the fundamental operating skill of modern work.
That paints a picture of a radically different HR professional, less of a paper pusher, more of a strategic technologist. So let's shift gears now to the action plan.
Okay.
If an organization recognizes these forces and this needed skill set, what are the actionable strategies they have to adopt immediately?
For organizations, the sources highlight 4 strategic mandates to maintain resilience and foster a growth mindset. First, they have to clearly define and constantly reiterate their core mission and purpose. If the work is fluid, the purpose must be rigid.
Second, I'm guessing, supporting massive upskilling initiative.
Absolutely. Given the rapid obsolescence of skills due to AI, this requires real investment, not just a mandate. And third, organizations have to fundamentally rethink their work models and job design. You can't just take a traditional full-time job description and hand it to a specialized gig worker. The design itself must change.
So instead of hiring an in-house marketer, you create an outcome-based contract for 3 product launch campaigns, separating task ownership from employment status.
Exactly. You focus on the deliverable, not the clock time. This ties back to the 4 innovating patterns mentioned in the source. Innovating every day, innovating over the years, innovating with everyone, and innovating more than technology.
Meaning innovation has to be systemic, built into daily operations involving everyone, and focused on process and structure, not just buying a latest AI tool.
You've got it.
Okay, now let's flip it to the individual level. What's the tactical advice for someone, whether an HR pro or anyone else, navigating this turbulent conditional work landscape?
Individuals need to adopt a growth mindset that is focused entirely on portability and adaptability. The first piece of advice is to develop transferable skills, the ability to negotiate, communicate complex ideas, manage projects, skills that are valuable regardless of the platform or the company you're using.
Those skills travel.
They do. Second, build adaptive networks. This means deliberately cultivating a professional safety net and source of opportunities outside of your current organization.
Right.
When organizational loyalty is fading, your personal network is your ultimate form of job security.
Which is more vital than ever when contracts are conditional and roles are fluid.
Absolutely. The sources also advise finding passions outside work to maintain balance and perspective. And critically, they suggest individuals seriously consider self-employment or fractional work. The gig economy isn't just for low-skill tasks anymore. It's a structural option for high-skill professionals who want autonomy.
This entire deep dive has given us an incredible shortcut to understanding the next phase of work. We started by naming those 3 external trends: the overwhelming use of AI, changing demographics from extreme longevity, and the imperative of globalization.
We then connected those forces to the new reality of work, defined by fluid roles, machine augmentation, and the strategic complexity of managing that conditional employee experience.
And we wrapped up by emphasizing the absolute necessity of new HR capabilities, especially sense-making, computational thinking, and cognitive load management, to help organizations not just survive, but truly thrive.
They're the currency of the future workforce.
So what does this all mean for you? We highlighted that the future is dominated by how customized the experience is, what we called conditional EX. Given the emerging power of computational thinking as an essential HR skill, here's our final thought for you to mull over. How can HR strategically measure and manage the conditions that define EX for a gig worker or a remote employee, ensuring equity and fairness across these radically fluid work models, without sacrificing the operational flexibility that organizations now require?
It's a complex equation. It requires advanced data literacy and, I think, a lot of strategic empathy. But solving it is how HR retains its best talent and secures its own strategic role for the future.